Rebecca Chen's office occupied the entire 23rd floor of a downtown Denver high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of the Rocky Mountains. The space radiated success and competence, exactly what I needed. Right now, I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. She was younger than I'd expected. Maybe 35, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses and an even sharper smile. Her reputation preceded her. Rebecca had never lost a wrongful termination case, and she specialized in taking down executives who thought they were untouchable. "Tell me everything," she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her glass desk. "Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." I spent the next 3 hours walking her through 4 years of employment at Brennan Tech. The projects I'd led, the innovations I'd developed, the intellectual property I'd created. I showed her emails, performance reviews, and client testimonials. Most importantly, I showed her something Marcus didn't know existed. "You kept personal backups?" Rebecca's eyebrows rose. "Not just backups, detailed logs." I opened my laptop and navigated to an encrypted folder. Every project I worked on, every algorithm I developed, every security protocol I designed, I documented the entire creative process. Timestamps, version histories, communications with clients, even recordings of brainstorming sessions when I was working on major innovations. Rebecca leaned forward, studying the screen. "This is incredibly thorough. I learned early in my career to protect my work. I've seen too many talented people have their innovations stolen by unscrupulous employers." I clicked through several folders. Everything is date-stamped and backed up to multiple secure cloud services. Some of it goes back to my first week at the company. "And you can prove you created all of this independently?" Every single line of code, every algorithm, every security framework. I can show you the evolution of each project from initial concept to final implementation. I even have the coffee-stained napkins where I sketched out some of the early ideas. Rebecca's smile was predatory. "Catherine, what your former employer is planning isn't just unethical, it's criminal. Corporate espionage, theft of intellectual property, fraudulent termination to facilitate theft, conspiracy to commit fraud. We're talking about federal crimes here." The call came at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was standing in my kitchen, steamy, rising from my coffee mug, watching the sunrise paint golden streaks across the Denver skyline through my apartment's floor-to-ceiling windows. It was the kind of morning that made you grateful to be alive. Crisp October air, the smell of fresh coffee, and the promise of another day building something meaningful. I'd been with Brennan Tech Solutions for 4 years, 3 months, and 16 days. Not that I was counting, but when you love what you do, time becomes precious. I'd started as a junior cybersecurity analyst and worked my way up to Senior Director of Information Security, building systems that protected millions of dollars in client data across 12 states. The caller ID showed Marcus Brennan's name, my boss, mentor, and the man who'd hired me straight out of my master's program at Colorado State. Marcus had been different then, passionate about technology's potential to make the world safer. We'd spent countless late nights designing security frameworks, dreaming about making cybersecurity accessible to smaller companies that couldn't afford enterprise-level protection. "Catherine," his voice was clipped, businesslike. No morning pleasantries, no mention of the client presentation we'd been preparing for weeks. "I need you to come in early today. We have a situation." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. In 4 years, I'd never heard Marcus sound this distant. This was the man who'd celebrated my promotion by taking the entire team out for dinner, who'd personally recommended me for the Cybersecurity Innovation Award I'd won last year, who'd called me the technical backbone of the company just 3 months ago during our quarterly board meeting. "What kind of situation, Marcus?" "Just come in, bring your personal items, We'll discuss everything when you arrive." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my reflection caught in its black screen, looking confused and concerned. "Bring your personal items." Those 4 words echoed in my mind like a death knell. In corporate speak, that phrase had only one meaning. I drove to the office in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The morning rush hour, traffic that usually annoyed me, now felt like a temporary reprieve. Every red light was another moment before I had to face whatever was waiting for me. Brennan Tech Solutions occupied 3 floors of the prestigious First National Bank building in downtown Denver. We moved there 2 years ago when the company expanded from 30 to over 100 employees. I remembered Marcus's excitement the day we signed the lease. "Catherine, we're not a startup anymore. We're building something that will outlast us both." The parking garage felt cavernous and cold. My footsteps echoed off the concrete walls as I walked toward the employee elevator, the same route I'd taken over 1,000 times. But today, everything felt different. Ominous. The elevator ride to the 15th floor stretched like an eternity. When the doors opened, I noticed something immediately wrong. The usual morning bustle was absent. The hallways felt hollow, conversations dying abruptly. As I passed, Jennifer from accounting avoided eye contact. Tom from the development team suddenly became very interested in his computer screen. Even stranger, I noticed several people carrying cardboard boxes. Not just any boxes, the same generic brown containers that HR used for employee departures. Marcus was waiting in his corner office, standing behind his mahogany desk like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. The office that had once felt warm and welcoming now seemed cold and sterile. The walls lined with awards and company photos felt like monuments to something that was ending. His assistant, Janet, hovered near the door with a cardboard box and what looked like a legal document. Janet had been with the company longer than anyone except Marcus himself. She'd helped me navigate company politics in my early days, always ready with advice or a sympathetic ear. Now she wouldn't meet my eyes. Behind Janet stood 2 people I didn't recognize. A woman in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase, and a man who looked like corporate security. The woman had the bearing of someone accustomed to delivering bad news professionally. "Sit down, Catherine." Marcus didn't look at me directly. "I'll stand." My voice came out steadier than I felt. He cleared his throat, adjusted his tie, a nervous habit I'd observed during countless high-stakes client meetings. But this was different. This was personal anxiety, not professional pressure. "Catherine, I want you to know this isn't easy for any of us." The corporate lawyer, because that's clearly what she was, stepped forward. "Ms. Davids, I'm Amanda Foster from Klein, Morrison & Associates. We're here to discuss some concerning irregularities that have come to light regarding your work. Effective immediately, we're terminating your employment with Brennan Tech Solutions," Amanda Foster continued, her voice clinical and rehearsed. "We've discovered some serious irregularities in your work, concerns about intellectual property, violations, unauthorized access to classified systems, and potential data breaches. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel." Now, back to where we left off. The words hit me like physical blows. "What?" Marcus finally looked at me, but his expression was unreadable. "Catherine, we've been conducting an internal investigation for several weeks. The evidence suggests you've been copying proprietary algorithms and security protocols to external drives." "That's impossible," I said, my voice rising. "I've never done anything like that. Marcus, you know me. We've worked together for 4 years. I helped build half the systems you're talking about." Amanda Foster slid a document across the desk. "This is your termination agreement. It outlines the company's findings and the terms of your departure." I picked up the paper with trembling hands. The legal jargon swam before my eyes, but certain phrases leaped out. immediate termination for cause, suspected corporate espionage, forfeiture of all unvested stock options, forfeiture of accrued vacation time, non-disclosure agreement regarding all company operations. At the bottom, a severance amount that was not just insultingly low, it was practically nothing. 2 weeks of base salary, with no benefits continuation. "This is absurd," I whispered, my hands shaking as I read through the accusations. "I've given this company everything. I designed the entire cybersecurity framework that's protecting our clients' data right now. I've personally prevented 3 major breaches that could have cost millions. I've worked weekends, holidays, missed family events because this place mattered to me." "The decision is final," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Sign the agreement, take your severance, and we can all move on quietly. No criminal charges, no public allegations, just a clean separation." The threat was clear. Sign this or face criminal prosecution for crimes I didn't commit. "This is absurd," I whispered. "I've given this company 4 years of my life. I designed the entire cybersecurity framework that's protecting our clients' data right now. I saved us from 3 major breaches. Pack your things, Catherine." Marcus's voice was ice. "Security will escort you out in 30 minutes. Any attempt to access company systems after today will be considered criminal trespassing." That's when I noticed them. 2 additional security guards standing just outside the office door. Not the familiar faces of our regular building security, but serious-looking men in dark suits who clearly specialized in corporate enforcement. The humiliation washed over me in waves. 4 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, skipped vacations. 4 years of building something I believed in, only to be discarded like yesterday's newspaper. And not just discarded, branded as a criminal. But as I stood there, looking at Marcus Brennan's face, I noticed something else. His eyes wouldn't meet mine for more than a few seconds at a time. His hands fidgeted with his pen, a nervous habit that only surfaced when he was lying to major clients. The confident CEO who could command a boardroom full of investors was avoiding eye contact with the woman he was destroying. He was nervous. More than nervous. He was scared. And Amanda Foster, the corporate lawyer, kept glancing at her watch. She wanted this over quickly. "I need my laptop," I said quietly, testing their reaction. "Already been confiscated and is being analyzed by our forensics team," Janet chimed in, her voice artificially cheerful but shaky. "Everything you're authorized to take is in this box." I looked at the cardboard container, my few personal photos, a coffee mug my nephew had made in art class, my desk plant that I'd somehow kept alive for 3 years. 4 years of my professional life reduced to items that could fit in a shoebox. "The security protocol manuals I wrote, I need copies for my portfolio." "Company property," Marcus said quickly, too quickly. "Can't release them under any circumstances. Trade secrets." Another red flag. Those manuals were industry standard, documentation that I'd co-authored with external consultants. Any legitimate termination would allow me to keep sanitized copies for future employment purposes. Their refusal to let me have anything suggested they were planning to use my work in ways that required me to be completely cut off from it. What? About my personal files, photos, documents I stored on the company drive? Amanda Foster's expression hardened. "Everything on company equipment is company property. You should have thought about that before engaging in unauthorized activities." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. They weren't just firing me. They were painting me as a criminal who deserved to lose everything. I picked up the box, feeling its pathetic weight. "I need time to think about this agreement." "You have until end of business today," Marcus replied. "After that, the offer expires." As the security guards flanked me toward the elevator, I caught glimpses of my former colleagues. Some looked away, others watched with mixture of sympathy and fear, wondering if they were next. But Sarah Martinez, my closest work friend, caught my eye and mouthed something I couldn't quite make out. The elevator doors closed, sealing me away from the life I'd built. In the reflection of the polished steel, I saw a woman who looked defeated, carrying a box of memories. But behind my eyes, something else was stirring. I wasn't just fired. I was set up. 3 hours later, I sat in the cramped booth of Mickey's Diner, staring at Sarah Martinez across a plate of untouched scrambled eggs. She'd texted me 20 minutes after my forced exit. "We need to talk, not here. Meet me at the II Diner on Colfax." Sarah looked exhausted, her usually pristine appearance disheveled. She kept glancing toward the window as if expecting someone to burst through the door. "Catherine, what happened up there was orchestrated," she said without preamble. "I've been watching Marcus for weeks. Something's been eating at him." "What do you mean, orchestrated?" She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Remember the Meridian Industries contract? The one worth $12 million that we landed last month?" I nodded. It was our biggest client acquisition in years, a comprehensive cybersecurity overhaul for a chain of medical facilities. I'd written the entire proposal, designed the implementation timeline, personally pitched to their board. Marcus is claiming he spearheaded that entire project. He's taking full credit in meetings with the board, but that's not the worst part. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for her coffee. "There's another company bidding for the renewal. Contract next year. Pinnacle Security Systems." My blood ran cold. Pinnacle was our biggest competitor, known for undercutting prices and stealing talent. So, Marcus has been having lunch meetings with David Kellner. David Kellner, Pinnacle's CEO, a man with the business ethics of a hungry shark. You're saying Marcus is planning to jump ship? I'm saying he already has one foot out the door, but he needs something to sweeten the deal for Kellner. Sarah's eyes met mine. He needs to bring Kellner something valuable, something that would give Pinnacle a massive competitive advantage. The realization hit me like a freight train. My security protocols. All of them. The encryption algorithms, the intrusion detection systems, the client vulnerability assessments. Everything you've developed over 4 years. It's worth millions to a competitor. I felt sick. But firing me doesn't give him access to my work. It's all password protected, encrypted. Catherine. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. They didn't just fire you. They fired you for intellectual property violations. That gives them legal justification to seize all your work files, claiming they need to investigate what you allegedly stole. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The rushed termination, the immediate laptop confiscation, the refusal to let me keep even basic documentation. Marcus wasn't just getting rid of me. He was positioning himself to steal everything I'd created and hand it to his new employer. "There's more," Sarah continued. "I overheard Janet on the phone. Yesterday, she was talking to someone about cleaning up the digital trail and making sure the transition looked legitimate to any outside investigation." I pushed my plate away, my appetite completely gone. "How long do you think he's been planning this?" "Months. Maybe longer. The Meridian contract was probably his audition piece for Kellner. Proof that he could deliver high-level proposals and implementations. Using my work. Using your work." We sat in silence for a moment. The diner's ambient noise, clinking dishes, muffled conversations, the hiss of the coffee machine, seemed to come from another world. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." She nodded. "Do you think anyone else knows about Marcus's plan?" Her hesitation told me everything. "Some people suspect something's wrong. The way he's been acting, the sudden policy changes, the rush to digitize all the legacy systems. But most people are just trying to keep their heads down. And you? Why are you telling me this?" Sarah's laugh was bitter. "Because I'm probably next. Marcus has been questioning my work lately, asking pointed questions about my project methodologies. I think he's looking for another scapegoat, someone else he can frame for irregularities." while he makes his grand exit. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Thank you. For telling me. For believing me. For taking the risk. What are you going to do? I was quiet for a long moment, my mind racing through possibilities. Marcus had made several critical errors. He'd underestimated me, assuming I'd be too humiliated and frightened to fight back. He'd underestimated Sarah, not realizing that the quiet woman he'd been planning to sacrifice next was actually documenting his crimes. And most importantly, he'd assumed that his threats and legal maneuvering would be enough to cover his tracks. He was wrong on all counts. I'm going to make a phone call, I said finally. To who? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Rebecca Chen, the employment attorney who'd helped my neighbor with a wrongful termination. Case 2 years ago. I'd kept her card in my wallet ever since, never imagining I'd need it. To someone who's going to make Marcus Brennan's life very, very complicated. Sarah's eyes widened. Catherine, are you sure? Taking on a company like Brennan Tech? It's going to be expensive, time-consuming. They have resources, connections. Marcus has relationships with judges, politicians, other CEOs. This could destroy your career permanently. So could letting him get away with this. I stood up, leaving money on the table for both our meals. And Sarah? I have something Marcus doesn't. What's that? I patted my jacket pocket where the USB drive waited. The truth. 4 years of documented evidence proving every single thing I created for that company. And now, thanks to you, proof of what he's planning to do with it. As I walked toward my car, phone already dialing Rebecca Chen's office, I felt something I hadn't experienced since walking into Marcus's office that morning. Power. Not the false power that comes from a title or an office, but the real power that comes from knowing you're right and having the tools to prove it. Marcus Brennan thought he'd just eliminated a problem. Instead, he'd just created a much bigger one. But first, I needed to understand exactly what Sarah had discovered. And I needed to see what was on that USB drive she'd risked her career to give me. The war was just beginning, and I intended to win it completely. Rebecca Chen's office occupied the entire 23rd floor of a downtown Denver high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of the Rocky Mountains. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and an even sharper smile. "Tell me everything," she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her glass desk. "Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." I spent the next 2 hours walking her through 4 years of employment at Brennan Tech. The projects I'd led, the innovations I'd developed, the intellectual property I'd created. I showed her emails, performance reviews, and client testimonials. Most importantly, I showed her something Marcus didn't know existed. "You kept personal backups?" Rebecca's eyebrows rose. "Not just backups? Detailed logs." I opened my laptop and navigated to an encrypted folder. Every project I worked on, every algorithm I developed, every security protocol I designed, I documented the entire creative process. Timestamps, version histories, communications with clients. Rebecca leaned forward, studying the screen. "This is incredibly thorough. I learned early in my career to protect my work. I've seen too many talented people have their innovations stolen by unscrupulous employers." I clicked through several folders. Everything is date-stamped and backed up to multiple secure cloud services. Some of it goes back 4 years. And you can prove you created all of this independently? Every single line of code, every algorithm, every security framework. I can show you the evolution of each project from initial concept to final implementation. Rebecca's smile was predatory. "Catherine, what your former employer is planning isn't just unethical, it's criminal. Corporate espionage, theft of intellectual property, fraudulent termination to facilitate theft. We're talking about federal crimes. Here. What do you recommend? First, we document everything. Every conversation, every piece of evidence, every instance of misconduct. Second, we file complaints with the appropriate regulatory bodies. Third, she paused, studying me carefully. How do you feel about going on the offensive? What do you mean? I mean, instead of just defending yourself, we attack. We don't just prove you were wrongfully terminated, we expose the entire scheme. We make Marcus Brennan and his accomplices face the full consequences of their actions. 3 days later, I was sitting in my apartment when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus Brennan's number. Catherine. His voice was tight, strained. We need to talk. About what, Marcus? About resolving this situation amicably. I think there may have been some miscommunication earlier this week. I almost laughed. Rebecca had predicted this call would come. What kind of miscommunication? Look, maybe we were hasty with the termination. Maybe we can work something out. A consulting arrangement, perhaps. Very generous terms. I'm listening. Full consulting rate, flexible schedule, you keep all your unvested stock options. We just need this to stay quiet, you understand? No need for lawyers or complications. I let the silence stretch for a long moment. Through my apartment window, I could see the Brennan Tech building in the distance, its logo gleaming in the afternoon sun. Marcus, can I ask you something? Of course. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about Pinnacle? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Catherine, I don't know what you think you... David Kellner offered you the CTO position, didn't he? 50% salary increase, equity package, corner office. All you had to do was bring him my security protocols. That's absurd. I would never... You would never what? Steal intellectual property from your own employees? Frame them for violations they didn't commit? Conspire to sell trade secrets to a competitor? His breathing was becoming labored. Catherine, whatever you think you know. I know about the lunch meetings. I know about the digital trail Janet was supposed to clean up. I know about the Meridian contract you're planning to recreate for Pinnacle using my work. I paused, letting each word sink in. And I know that none of this is going to stay quiet. What do you want? His voice was barely a whisper. Justice. I hung up the phone and immediately called Rebecca. He took the bait, I said. Perfect. Did you record the conversation? Every word. He essentially confessed to the entire scheme. Excellent. We'll add this to the evidence file. Catherine, I have some news. The Colorado Department of Labor has agreed to fast-track the investigation based on the evidence we provided. And the FBI's Economic Crime Division is opening a preliminary inquiry. My hands started shaking. The FBI? Corporate espionage involving interstate commerce is a federal crime. If our allegations are proven, and I believe they will be, Marcus Brennan could face serious prison time. 2 weeks later, I was having coffee with Sarah when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the message and her face went pale. Catherine, you need to see this. She turned her phone toward me. It was a company-wide email from the Brennan Tech Board of Directors. Effective immediately, Marcus Brennan has resigned his position as Chief Executive Officer. The board has appointed interim leadership while we conduct a thorough review of recent operational decisions. We are committed to maintaining the highest ethical standards and will cooperate fully with any ongoing investigations. Sarah looked at me in amazement. They fired him. Actually, I said, taking a sip of my coffee, I think you'll find he resigned, probably part of a plea agreement to avoid criminal prosecution. How do you know? I smiled and pulled out my phone. Because Rebecca just texted me. Pinnacle Security Systems issued a statement this morning withdrawing their job offer to Marcus and suspending all business discussions pending the resolution of legal matters. Sarah's jaw dropped. You destroyed his exit strategy. I protected. my intellectual property and exposed a criminal conspiracy. The fact that it destroyed his exit strategy was just a bonus. 3 months later, I received a call from Jennifer Walsh, the new CEO of Brennan Tech. She was offering me Marcus's former position, not just my old job back, but the top spot, with a salary that was double what Marcus had been making. The board recognizes that your innovations and leadership were instrumental in this company's success, she said. We want to make things right. I considered the offer for exactly 3 seconds. Thank you, Jennifer, but I have to decline. May? I asked why. I looked around my new office, a sleek space in Boulder with mountain views and my name on the door. Catherine David's cybersecurity consulting was already booked solid for the next 6 months, with clients who appreciated both my technical skills and my commitment to ethical business practices. Because I've built something better. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and pulled up the case file Rebecca had shared with me that morning. Marcus Brennan had accepted a plea agreement, 5 years of probation, community service, and a permanent ban from serving as an officer in any publicly traded company. He'd also been ordered to pay restitution, not to Brennan Tech but to me, for the intellectual property he'd attempted to steal. The amount was more than enough to fund my new company for years. I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the Rocky Mountains, their peaks dusted with early snow. My phone was ringing. Another potential client, probably. Another company that needed protection from people like Marcus Brennan. People who thought they could take what others had built through talent and hard work. People who thought they were smarter than the systems they were trying to exploit. People who never learned that the best security systems aren't just designed to keep threats out. They're designed to make sure that when threats are detected, they're eliminated completely. I answered the phone with a smile. Catherine David's Cybersecurity. How can I protect you? The call came from an unknown number on a Friday evening, 6 months after Marcus's sentencing. I almost didn't answer. I'd been getting calls from journalists and podcasters ever since the story broke in TechCrunch with the headline, How One Woman Brought Down a Corporate Espionage Ring. Ms. Davids? This is Lisa Park from Meridian Industries. Meridian. The $12 million client whose contract Marcus had tried to steal. I sat up straighter in my home office chair. We need to talk, Lisa continued. There's something you should know about what Marcus Brennan was planning. Something that, FBI investigation didn't uncover. 20 minutes later, I was driving to Meridian's headquarters in Englewood, my mind racing. The FBI investigation had been thorough, but corporate conspiracies often had tentacles that reached further than anyone imagined. Lisa Park was Meridian's chief information officer, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd built her reputation securing healthcare data across the western United States. Her office was sparse but functional, decorated only with cybersecurity certifications and a photo of her graduating from MIT. Coffee? She offered, gesturing to a machine in the corner. Please. As she prepared 2 cups, she spoke without turning. Around. Catherine, what I'm about to tell you could implicate my own company in some very serious problems. But after watching what Marcus tried to do to you, I can't stay quiet anymore. She handed me a steaming mug and sat across from her desk. Marcus didn't just try to steal your security protocols for Pinnacle. He was planning to sell our client data to medical identity theft rings. The coffee mug nearly slipped from my hands. What? 3 months before you were fired, Marcus approached me privately, said he'd discovered vulnerabilities in our data that needed immediate patching, offered to fix them personally, off the books, for a substantial fee. Did you agree? I was suspicious. Marcus was always more of a business guy than a technical specialist. Why would he want to personally handle security patches? Lisa pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. So I had my team investigate. We found traces of unauthorized access attempts on our servers, all originating from IP addresses registered to Mountain Vista LLC. My blood ran cold. Mountain Vista, Marcus's shell company that Pinnacle had been paying. He wasn't trying to fix. Vulnerabilities, I said. understanding flooding through me. He was creating them. Exactly. Backdoors that would allow external parties to access patient records, insurance information, billing data, the kind of information that sells for thousands of dollars per record on the dark web. Lisa opened the folder and showed me network logs, security reports, financial records. The evidence painted a picture of a conspiracy far more sinister than corporate espionage. Why didn't you report this to the FBI? Because, Lisa's voice dropped to a whisper, my CEO initially approved Marcus's access. William Meridian thought he was getting a discount on premium security services. If this comes out, it could destroy our company and put thousands of patients' privacy at risk. I set down my coffee cup, my mind working through the implications. Lisa, you realize what you're telling me? Marcus Brennan wasn't just stealing intellectual property. He was planning to facilitate medical identity theft on a massive scale. And if I hadn't gotten suspicious, he might have succeeded. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the revelation settling between us. What do you want me to do with this information? I want you to help me do the right thing. Help me report this to the authorities in a way that protects our patients, while ensuring Marcus faces additional charges for what he was planning. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Rebecca Chen's number. I know exactly who to call. The FBI raid on David Kellner's Pinnacle security offices happened at dawn on a Tuesday. Rebecca and I watched from across the street as federal agents carried out boxes of documents and computer equipment. The additional evidence Lisa had provided had blown the investigation wide open. 23 companies, Rebecca said, reviewing the latest briefing from Agent Martinez, the lead investigator. Marcus and Kellner weren't just planning to steal your work. They'd been running this scheme for over 3 years. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Pinnacle had been recruiting executives from cybersecurity firms across the region, offering lucrative positions in exchange for proprietary technology and client access. The stolen innovations were then repackaged and sold to overseas companies, while client data was harvested for identity theft operations. How many victims? I asked. So far, they've identified 47 individual employees who were terminated under false pretenses. Combined, the stolen intellectual property is valued at over $200 million. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID showed a number I recognized, Dr. Priya Patel, the Chief Technology Officer at HealthSecure, one of Denver's leading medical data protection companies. Catherine, thank God I reached you. I just got a call from the FBI. They said, you might be able to help me understand what happened to my company. I put the call on speaker so Rebecca could hear. What's going on, Priya? Remember when I was suddenly fired 8 months ago? They claimed I was selling trade secrets to competitors. I tried to fight it, but the evidence seemed overwhelming. My stomach dropped. Let me guess. False files planted on your computer, accusations of intellectual property theft, immediate termination with no severance. Exactly. How did you know? Rebecca and I exchanged glances. Because the same thing happened to me. Priya, you were set up by the same people who tried to destroy my career. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. They're filing charges against HealthSecure's CEO next week, Priya finally said. Conspiracy, fraud, theft of government funds. Apparently, the security protocols they stole from me were being used to protect federal healthcare databases. When those systems failed, it cost taxpayers millions. Priya, I want you to call Rebecca Chen. She's the attorney who helped me expose this conspiracy. She's putting together a class action lawsuit against everyone involved. After Priya hung up, Rebecca turned to me with a grim expression. Catherine, this is bigger than we thought. We're not just talking about corporate espionage anymore. This is organized crime with ties to international data trafficking. The Justice Department is considering RICO charges. RICO, the Racketeer, Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, reserved for the most serious organized crime cases. What does that mean for Marcus? If they can prove he was part of an ongoing criminal enterprise, He could face decades in federal prison instead of years. That evening, I was working late in my Boulder office when Sarah called. "Catherine, you need to see the news." I turned on the television just in time to catch the breaking news report. Federal authorities have arrested 6 additional executives in what they're calling the largest corporate espionage ring ever uncovered in Colorado. The investigation, which began with a wrongful termination case filed by cybersecurity expert Catherine Davids, has now expanded to include charges of racketeering, money laundering, and international data trafficking, the reporter continued. According to sources close to the investigation, the criminal enterprise operated for over 5 years and victimized dozens of technology companies across the western United States. The total value of stolen intellectual property and client data may exceed $500 million. My phone started ringing immediately. Reporters, other victims, potential clients who wanted protection from similar schemes. I let them all go to voicemail. Instead, I called the one person who'd been with me since the beginning. "Sarah, are you watching this?" "I can't believe it," she said. "When I handed you that USB drive in the diner, I thought we were exposing one bad CEO. I had no idea we were uncovering something this massive." Neither did I. "Sarah, the FBI wants to interview you again next week. They think there might be other companies involved that we haven't identified yet." "I'll tell them everything I know. Catherine, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd just signed Marcus's termination agreement and walked away?" I looked out my office window at the lights of Boulder spread out below, thinking about the hundreds of victims who might never have gotten justice, the millions of people whose personal data would have been sold to criminals. "I try not to think about it," I said, "but I'm glad we fought back." The federal courthouse in downtown Denver was a fortress of marble and steel, its imposing architecture designed to inspire respect for the law. As I walked up the steps for what would be my final testimony in the case against Marcus Brennan and his co-conspirators, I felt the weight of 2 years of legal battles settling on my shoulders. Rebecca was waiting for me inside, along with Agent Martinez and Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh. No relation to the new Brennan Tech CEO. Just an unfortunate coincidence. "Ready for this?" Rebecca asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." The courtroom was packed. In the defendants section sat Marcus Brennan, David Kellner, and 4 other executives who'd been swept up in the expanding investigation. Marcus looked older, grayer, diminished. The confident CEO who'd tried to destroy my career was gone, replaced by a man facing the possibility of spending the rest of his productive years in federal prison. The prosecution calls Catherine Davids to the stand. I walked to the witness box, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor began with basic questions: my background, my work at Brennan Tech, the events leading up to my termination. "Ms. Davids, can you tell the court about the intellectual property you developed during your employment?" I spent the next hour walking the jury through 4 years of innovations: security algorithms that protected millions of patient records, encryption protocols that secured financial transactions across 12 states, threat detection systems that had prevented countless cyber attacks. And what was the estimated value of these innovations? According to an independent analysis commissioned by the FBI, the intellectual property I developed was worth approximately $47 million in licensing fees and competitive advantage. A murmur went through the courtroom. $47 million. That was just my work alone. The total value of stolen innovations from all victims exceeded $200 million. The prosecutor continued, "Ms. Davids, what happened when you refused to sign the defendant's termination agreement?" "They escalated their threats. False evidence was planted on my computer. My professional reputation was attacked in industry publications. Private investigators were hired to find compromising information about my personal life." I looked directly at Marcus as I spoke. He couldn't meet my eyes. "Did you ever consider giving up your fight for justice?" "Never. Not just for myself, but for all the other victims." As the investigation expanded, we discovered that Marcus Brennan and his co-conspirators had destroyed dozens of careers and stolen hundreds of millions of dollars in intellectual property. Someone had to stand up to them. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal, but expected. They tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, questioned my documentation methods, suggested I'd stolen the very intellectual property I was claiming to protect. I'd been preparing for this moment for 2 years. Every question had an answer backed by evidence. Every accusation was met with documented proof. Ms. Davids, isn't it true that you kept extensive records of your work because you were planning to steal company secrets? No. I kept extensive records because I'd seen too many talented people have their innovations stolen by unscrupulous employers. I documented my work to protect myself from exactly the kind of theft that Marcus Brennan attempted. But you did take company property when you left Brennan Tech. I took nothing. Every file I possessed was either my personal property or work I'd created independently and documented from conception to implementation. The FBI's forensic analysis confirmed this. The defense attorney shuffled through his papers, clearly frustrated. Ms. Davids, do you expect this jury to believe that you were simply an innocent victim in all of this? I leaned forward slightly, looking directly at the jury. I expect this jury to look at the evidence. 2 years of FBI investigation, hundreds of thousands of documents, testimony from dozens of witnesses, forensic analysis by multiple independent experts. The evidence speaks for itself. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. My part in this legal battle was finally over. 3 days later, the jury returned their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Marcus Brennan was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. David Kellner received 22 years. The other co-conspirators received sentences ranging from 8 to 15 years. The civil lawsuit settlement was sealed, but Rebecca assured me it was enough to fund my company's expansion for decades. More importantly, a victims' compensation fund was established to help the dozens of professionals whose careers had been destroyed by the conspiracy. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.